Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you are a player that feels like you can't get the club face strong enough or closed enough throughout the swing, then in today's video I have a perfect drill for you. So let's get into it. So in the backswing, we can often see that the club face can get quite open. Now, I'm actually going to show you how I would measure if the club face is open or not, and then we'll talk about how we can get it a little bit stronger. So if I just take an alignment rod and I pop that alignment rod just down the shaft like so, so the club face is running parallel to that. Now, I would regard that as somewhat square to me. So when I'm looking down that shaft now, I can see that that club face, the leading edge, is running at a 90-degree angle to roughly where I'm looking. And if the club from my eye line is tilted more to the left or down like that, you can see the toe of the club starting to close, then we would regard that as something that's moving more into a closed state. And if the club face is more open like that, almost facing up to the sky, then we would regard that as open to the shaft. So throughout different positions in the swing, we might see very different club face alignments in relation to the shaft. So when I'm talking about an open club face, that is certainly what I will be talking about. So if I start to make a takeaway here, and we can see that the toe of the golf club is more up to the air or running at this 12 o'clock position, some coaches might regard that as open. Now, the first thing I just want to mention before I really dive into this video is everything I'm talking about is going to be assuming that you have a neutral grip, nothing strong or weak, and quite normal hand structure, because of course weak grips require different wrist angles, strong grips require different wrist angles as well, and that is in a different video. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to assume that everything is neutral. So if I make my takeaway here, we see that's in that 12 o'clock position, I would regard that as somewhat square. I don't actually mind toe up to fractionally tipped to my left, so just strengthening out towards the 11 o'clock position for me. So something more like that. Now, what I'll often see a lot of players do is they understand that they don't want the club face too open or face to the sky, and we can see that the knuckles on my left hand are facing up to the sky. So they will very quickly bow their wrist. They understand, and we understand, that if I screw my wrist to the left or I bow it, that is a closing mechanism, which of course is true. So if I take a backswing and I screw my hand to the left, we can see that hoods it, or I just peel my wrist back, so we can also see that would hood the face. Now, that is a pattern that happens, but not necessarily at the beginning or instantly into the stroke. Because if I start to max out a range of motion, I will probably give it away again. So what I mean by that is if I completely bow my wrist really, really early in the swing and get the face as strong as possible, that's probably unmaintainable, right? So as I start to work into the top, I'm not going to be able to hold on to that for the duration of the swing, and I'm probably going to let go of some of that. So we'll often see players that work into a really bowed position actually begin to lose it in the downswing, and it doesn't always solve the issue. We want to work our hand from, it naturally has a little bit of cupping or angle like this at address because of the way I've held it, and it will begin to work more towards a flat state towards the top and more towards a bowed state coming into impact. It doesn't immediately go into a bowed state. It starts in this cup state, works towards flat, works towards bowed. That would be a generic kind of pattern that I would tend to see. If I just show you that, why do I want it to work into a bowed state? Well, I want some shaft lean. So the more I do that, the more I can create some shaft lean. Whereas the more cup, the more the shaft leans backwards. So as I start to go from this sort of cuppy state here, I would then get it somewhat near a flatter state at the top, to then fractionally bowing into the downswing, and you can see how that shaft naturally shallowed. And there is a fantastic training aid and drill that I give to a lot of players in person, and I thought that it'd be really cool to show you guys too. So this is the Educator by Tour Striker Golf. And you can set it to all different angles, but for purpose of this video, I'm just gonna pop it on this angle here. So it's not a 90-degree angle, it's actually slightly less than that. And all you do is you pop it into the end of the golf club and it just secures in like that. So it comes out a bit of an angle and then loops round. A little bit of a coat hanger type of look to it. And I would just square that up roughly to the leading edge. And then this now sits down the right-hand side of my left hand, or my left forearm. And there are other training aids out there that you will just keep your left arm up against that and it will produce a nice flat wrist. The reason I like this one is, again, it trains you to work into that bowed state, not immediately into it. Now, what I mean by that is, as I start to work to the top, my task here is that I actually flip that little training aid over and it now ends up on the left-hand side of my arm, and you can see how much shaft lean I would produce. Of course, if I get this wrong and flip it, it will just go back to that side again. And equally, if I don't get my wrist strong enough, I will just never ever flip it over. So you can see here what would happen. So if I went to the top, I'll actually hit one for you here. If I actually went to the top and I got that on the wrong side of my arm and hit a shot, I hit this high kind of slice off to the right. Whereas what I would prefer to see, and again, I'm going to go through how I would work with this a bit better in a moment, is I would prefer to see that as I come across, that starts to flip over, and then I come down and you can see that club face is fractionally stronger. Remember I said stronger being more to the left. And I would work somewhat like this with it, to the top, get it flipped at the top, and then through. So what I did there was I addressed it with my hand into a slight cup. You can see this is down the right-hand side of my forearm. And as I worked to the top, I kept that on the inside of my forearm until about here. And then I start to flip it over and then come down. So that would be how I work with it. So I have my cuppy state here, start to work back. It's on the inside of my forearm still. As I get to the top, I start to flip it over. You can see the more I lay that shaft down, the more it flips over. The more I bow my wrist, the more it flips over again. So again, I'm not slamming it straight into that position, because also that can drag the club in here. We're just gradually working it into that state. Now, the other thing I really like this for is shaft lean, because it gives me a huge sensation of shaft lean. I can't flick my wrist because it will flip back over again. So as I go to the top, I flip it, I come down trying to keep it on the inside. I would maybe roll my knuckles down to the ground that little bit more. And again, you can see how that affects that training aid and the face. And then work through the shot. And then once I've hit it, I can just recock and go into the center, go into my finish. So that's a pretty generic way in how I like the wrist to work. We don't instantly slam them into a bowed position. We work towards a cup state, flat, and a bit more bowed, which turns the face down, helps me shut the face, producing little draws for me. So I hope that video made some sense. And of course, if you did like it, please give the thumbs up. And if you could subscribe to the channel, it would really mean a lot. Thanks, and I'll see you all soon.